Hello and welcome to the Kashmir Notebook, a special Frontline broadcast with Gowhar Geelani. This is our 13th episode. And in this program, we are going to discuss the important and also controversial issue of liquor sales and demands about banning it, the social issues, and how the economy of liquor plays out in Kashmir. And to discuss this, we have an important guest, Mr. Naeem Akhtar, who has been an education minister in the PDP-BJP government previously and has worked in different capacities throughout his political as well as bureaucratic career. Mr. Akhtar, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, you have followed the debates recently in the Legislative Assembly, wherein again, this issue came up about the possible ban on liquor, and then arguments both in favor of like how liquor generates a lot of revenue for Jammu and Kashmir, and then the objections raised by the clergy. So how do you see it in the current context and also in the historical background, how it has played out in Kashmir?
This has been an unending debate. If you go through Kashmir's Sufi poetry, you'll find references to mas, maskers, maspyal, masmalre, the measures Kashmiris had for liquor. And it was actually sold even during Sultanate periods. There are references when some Sufis even allowed it, permitted it. But post-independence, there has been a debate always. Liquor has been flowing and there has been opposition. It was actually never banned, but for a brief period post the militancy, 1990 militancy, which was not a result of a ban or something, but a social sanction against it. The first reference I find of a legislative debate, which I remember, was when Sheikh Saab came back in 75, post-77 elections. There were very few opposition leaders who had found place in the assembly. Sheikh Abdullah and his National Conference had swept the polls. Among them was Mr. Sayyid Ali Geelani, who breached that wave and was elected from Sopur. He had got a legislation, a private member's bill then. And no less than a person than Sheikh Abdullah himself opposed it. And the argument was the same. Beyond morality, beyond any religious sanction against it or whatever, it was just the revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And the tourist interest of Kashmir. The value of Kashmir as a tourism product, we should go down.
So if I interrupt you here and I take you back to your government, and I vividly remember, like Hasib Rabu at the time said, who was also a minister, finance minister, and he said, on the one side, it is about individual choice. Like, for example, non-vegetarians cannot impose their view on vegetarians. And then he also linked, sale of liquor to J&K's economy and also tourism. Apart from the individual choice and also individual conscience and the social pressures, and because liquor more or less lacks social sanctity in Kashmir, but there is another side to it, as you pointed out, that people have also linked it to tourism.
Yes.
But then there is a very strong clergy in Kashmir as well. If we talk about, the Mirwais, the head priest, Mirwais Umar Farooq, recently also condemned the sale of liquor. And then the argument from the clergy was that if states like Gujarat, for example, or Bihar, or even Nagaland can ban liquor and they are dry states, why is tourism presented as an argument in a region where there is a substantial majority which is Muslim, and also which does not give social sanctity to liquor?
That is true. There are arguments for and against it. And as I have been telling you, people have been drinking, they have been having their peg. But at the same time, there has been a robust debate on this. There have been ironies also. If the strongest opponent of the national conference was, in fact, mocked for this, anybody who held a glass in his hand would be berated, and people would be asked to vote on the basis of that. You know that, what I am referring to that. So it has always been there, and but the consumption of liquor has been highly restricted in the society. Whatever be the official figures or whatever revenue, the revenue is minuscule considering what you are now actually uh, having as the state revenue, a minuscule portion of it in Kashmir. But in Jammu province, there is a lot of consumption.
There was some figures like 2,000 crore
Yes,
as revenue.
there's a lot. In Kashmir society, it's still socially very abhorred. And so far as this tourism thing goes on, Gujarat also attracts tourists, Nagar, every place in spite of the ban. But if you see the revival of tourism in Kashmir, we still don't have many bars in Kashmir, but the tourists still come. They obviously do not come only to drink in Kashmir. And when they drink, it becomes a news when you have cases of
Publicly, yeah.
public nuisance or whatever.
So that brings me to another question, because you have seen like the Srinagar city in the 70s or the 80s, and you were at one point in time also holding one important office which looked after the sale of liquor. And tell us about like how was Srinagar in the 70s? I remember like people have also compared Polo View of Srinagar to London's Piccadilly, and there were some movie halls which were screening Hollywood movies, more theaters than that would be in Delhi, for example. So, how was the liquor scene then in the
Yes.
70s and 80s?
I think post-colonial India had Kashmir also as one of its Srinagar, especially. Although the uh, society as such was kind of conservative, but Srinagar city was kind of a fashion leader. You had the latest fashions coming out of Srinagar. You have this Residency Road and Polo View. This was full of bars.
Discotheque.
There was a discotheque, yes. And it was a very free society, not obscene, very free society, very liberal society. We had many places there where people would go to entertain in the
Coffee
evenings,
house.
like not exactly like pubs, but there were these joints available. And the movies, we had 7, 8 movies. I was in charge of this excise, which included movie theaters as well. And I was the last, perhaps,
Saki.
of those days, and last bartender, you can say. We used to have two kinds of liquor. Liquor was controlled. We used to have a country liquor, which was in fact brewed and bottled by the government itself, by our department, excise department. And then it was contracted out through the vents. And the last vents were, before militancy, were contracted out in 89, when I was in charge of this. And those days, then a character emerged out of these militant ranks who was called
Air Marshal
who called himself Air Marshal Noor
Noor
Khan.
Khan.
He went around and
I think of
we
the
had
Allah
many
Tigers.
shops. We had many shops. In fact, most of them were non-Muslims, pandits, and some of them were owned by Muslim families.
Mostly by
A few of them,
non-Muslims.
mostly by non-Muslims. So he went around and barged into them and vandalized them, and people left the job, and most of them ran away, along with the uh, emigration that took place
This is before 89.
around 89, 89, 90. In that winter, it happened. So then some of them shifted to other things, but some of them closed their shop and went. Then there were movies. Srinagar used to have a matinee show, which was generally a Hollywood movie. And there were very funny translations in Urdu of those the titles of
The subtitles.
no, of the
Caption.
boards you had.
Okay. Posters.
Posters. So those were also very unique. And there
Do you
were
remember any funny one?
late night also shows, which would end around 1 p.m. and people would go 1 a.m. and people would
So in
go.
this vicinity of 3-4 kilometers, you had a cinema hall named Neelam. You had Regal.
We had
You
Neelam,
had
we had Regal,
Palladium.
we had this
Palladium.
Khayyam, we had Firdos, we had
Shiraz,
Shiraz,
Shah Cinema.
Yes, and Palladium. Palladium was the oldest.
So, like talking about liquor, but there was also something which happened before militancy. That
And
was,
there was Broadway.
Yeah, when the movie starring Anthony Quinn, which was The Line of the Desert, on Italy's colonization of Libya, and it also became very controversial. And actually, the government of the time banned screening of the movie.
It didn't become controversial. It became a trigger. Sheikh Abdullah was, as everybody knows, he was the most towering figure of Kashmir, and people even privately would not dare to think against him, question or have any wrong ideas about him.
His authority.
That was the kind of allegiance people had with him. But then the first thing came in 1977, when Congress withdrew the support from him, and the government fell. And the Sheikh Saab's personal popularity had gone down, because there were open protests against him in Srinagar. The posters that had been put up by his information department were pulled down in full public view. It was kind of a sacrilege at that time.
And kind of a first.
And but post 77, he regained, etc. However, but that was a different emotional.
That you are actually referring to
thing.
Beg Partha Sarthi Accord after that.
After that.
The
No, it was
had.
Before that. Okay. Beg Partha Sarthi.
74.
That was 74, 75. 75, he came, he became chief minister with the support of Congress. He had an alliance government. Till then, he had been calling them worms of the gutter, Gandhi Nali ke Keede. And he had also called for social boycott of people affiliated with Congress. Many people whose kith and kin died, they went without a janazah because nobody would dare go to them against Sheikh Saab's whip. So that was kind of post 77 was a comeback for him. The election of 77, when many things contributed to Sheikh Saab's win in that, and one was the kind of a broad alliance, including everybody from Morarji Desai to Maulana Farooq.
Double Farooq.
And Sheikh Saab was seen as a target of that and as a symbol of Kashmir. And it became an India versus Kashmir emotional battle. and Sheikh Saab came out of it fine. But then people again started realizing the broader struggle that Sheikh Saab had for 22 years carried on, in which he had run the plebiscite front, etc.,
For
Rai
22
Shumari
years.
for 22 years. And even before that, in 1931,
Against the Dogra
he
regime.
had started against Dogra regime. The idea was
Quit Kashmir movement.
no, the first idea was the empowerment of Kashmiri Muslims.
From economic empowerment to political empowerment.
Employment, economic, political, social, everything. So it had grown now. It had outgrown Sheikh Saab's current position as a chief minister, as one of the others. So when they watched this movie, I was part of that audience, and it was like
Eruption.
a sudden eruption. And people came out and just pulled down wherever there was a symbol of national conference.
So that brings me to another question. Recently, we had a debate between a PDP legislature from Pulwama, who has earlier worked as youth service, and sports, also the youth PDP leader, and has served in various capacities. And from the other side, National Conference's current education minister. So there were a lot of personal attacks, and the debate went on from arguments to personal arguments. But I wanted to know from you, since you have tracked various political and social developments in Jammu and Kashmir, that from your childhood, when you knew Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah as a towering figure that you mentioned that he was, how has like Sheikh Abdullah and then Farooq Abdullah or the National Conference as a political party treated its opposition right from earlier days till now, like this idea of labeling people, any opposition, and then trying to label them as this agent or that agent? How do you see this trajectory?
This is unfortunately a very irrefutable truth of Kashmir politics. From Sheikh Saab onwards, they created this pro-Pakistan lobby and externed them, although they were part of Kashmir's core political constituency.
Are you talking about the Muslim Conference and
the
Mirwais
Muslim
family?
Conference, Mirwais, and created this Sher Bakra between the followers of Mirwais
and the National Conference.
Somehow Farooq Abdullah at a later stage bridged that gap and with militancy disappeared. But this tag of being a mukhbir,
Informer,
being an informer, being attached to this party or that
or
party,
a Pakistani agent or a Delhi agent,
this has not gone out. This has not gone. This has not. They have not. In fact, when Sheikh Saab was released in 1964, there was a students' agitation around, students and young men's league, and there were some leaders like Mr. Abdul Rashid Kabuli, etc., who led that. It was also a separatist. It was also basically a fighting for the rights of Kashmiris. Because till then, you didn't have even
is
elections.
It the one which was before the Al Fatah thing?
After the Al Fatah thing.
Okay.
So there was a good students' agitation. So when Sheikh Saab came and he perhaps saw them as growing as threats, so the first thing he said, they are sponsored by IB.
Okay.
But then later, most of them were subsumed by the NC, and NC itself became, to many people, the replacement for earlier Congress regime and whatever. So, as I told you, a social boycott was called for anybody who
bearing allegiance with the Congress party.
The Congress party.
And is it true that some people...
Then the first thing that Sheikh Saab did in 75, he made a garment with them.
No, but is it true that if somebody was with the Congress and then he or she passed away, there was some kind of a social ostracization that nobody should, read their funeral.
Bakshi Ghulam Ahmad's mother
Hmm.
was the most prominent among them. She had to be buried during the night. So people would not attend their weddings, they would not respond to it. Such was the appeal of Sheikh Saab.
Mhm. So now,
It was kind of considered a sin, not just a political dissidence.
Mhm. As you said, sacrilege, or so another question that I wanted to ask you, because you were also the government spokesperson for the PDP-BJP government, and a lot of things happened during those years. For example, 2016, a lot of people youth got blinded by pellets, and there was one newspaper, the Kashmir Reader, which was banned through a government order when you were in charge. And right now we see like a lot of PDP leadership is talking about media freedom or human rights, violations and civil liberties. How do you look back at your tenure as part of the coalition government with the BJP,
There
and
have been,
having seen all these human rights violations and also gagging media
I am
rights?
not denying any of that, and for that we are sorry, obviously. But you have to see that in the context of the times we were in. Uh, the we had made this PDP BJP alliance as perhaps the last resort to resolve Kashmir issue. And I have said that in an interview to Indian Express 19 in 2017 itself, that this is the last credible political democratic arrangement to resolve Kashmir. But unfortunately, perhaps because of our failure to communicate, or the inherent situation in Kashmir, the feelings, the mistrust that has developed over the decades, people did not accept it. And to add to that situation, the architect of that alliance, the South Pole, North Pole, Mufti Saab, he passed away
January
in
2016.
January. He was there barely for 10 months. He might have been able to guide it through those turbulent waters better than we did. So it was a terrible thing for us to witness those killings. But it was also a bit of satisfaction that we could remedy part of it. Like we withdrew FIRs of 12,000 youth
Who were pelting stones
who had been accused of pelting
or
stones
involved in any kind of protest?
or any kind of protest, and who would have otherwise, whose career would have been finished. They would not have got passports or any employment or whatever. And the biggest thing that we could do was, from a person like Mr. Modi, get an interlocutor appointed,
Dineshwar Sharma?
Dineshwar Sharma. Then we had a very empowered this delegation, all party delegation led by Mr. Arun Jaitley, who genuinely came with a purpose to.
Are you talking about the one which had
And
OSC, Asaduddin OSC, and Sitaram
yes,
Yechury?
they were also Asaduddin. It was led by Mr. Arun Jaitley. And first time in the history of Jammu and Kashmir, a chief minister wrote personal letters to the Hurriyat people, to Mr. Geelani, Mr. Yasin Malik and others,
To get involved in the
Mirwais,
negotiations.
to kindly talk to them. But you know how they actually literally closed their doors. They kept pleading outside, please allow us. They could have just shown some courtesy, normal courtesy of, and then BJP and they had an agenda. We were there in spite of that agenda. We had our own agenda. We tried to work on that. But unfortunately, which is perhaps because of our failure to communicate, or the other ability of our distractors to disrupt that system to that extent.
And you also say that the passing away of Mufti Saeed also could be a critical factor.
I think so.
Let me tell you about, like, the New York Times wrote a headline on what happened during those periods, very disturbing period of 2016, and the headline was "Epidemic of Eye" about the pellet injuries. And I recall when your government took over, and I interviewed Mufti Muhammad Saeed in Jammu, and he described this partnership that you're talking about as a paradigm shift at the time. And then once the partnership ended, and his son Tasadduq Mufti told Indian Express that it was a partnership in crime, because in 3 years' time it could not stick together. So, looking back at those years and what happened in terms of gagging media, or in terms of human rights abuse, or in terms of that political alliance not working according to what you had thought. So, where do you stand today, and what, from a PDP perspective, how do you see your revival from being, you had 16 seats in the beginning from 2002, then you went up to 21 and 28, and then you were reduced to like 3 seats, and now you won the Badgam by elections. But how is this revival going to happen given all the context that you have?
Whatever you said is correct. The sequence of events, how it happened, and what New York Times said, and what the Sadhu Mufti said. But the one immutable fact is that till our government was there, they could not touch the special status of
370.
They could not do anything.
I think it was mentioned in the agenda of alliance
yes.
that the constitutional
it was
position,
number one.
yeah, constitutional status of Jammu and Kashmir will not be.
And they had to remove us.
To remove the special status.
To come through a back door. To do it through a governor and whatever. Through
but the National Conference is accusing PDP of actually paving the way for the BJP to do what it did.
That is normal squabbling. But I think Kashmir is above that, above the electoral performance above the electoral performance of PDP or NC. It is about the rights of the people. And if you are seeing around the world, around our part of the world, the strategic realities are that howsoever small a population, you have to reach out to them. You have to own them. You have to give them a sense of partnership. Otherwise, it will keep erupting. It's not your decision. It has to be a contract. It has to be a covenant, which there was till 2019 between the people of, although people like you would call us unionists, but we were partners. There was a contract between the people of Jammu and Kashmir and the rest of the country. So that contract has to be revived. It can't be one way.
So last two questions, Mr. Andrabi. One is about like what is happening in West Asia, Iran. So there's a geopolitical shift happening, as it seems. There's a churn going on. Do you see any impact of how things pan out in Iran? Like if Iran survives this war and if Iran comes out stronger, what could be the indirect impact on the South Asian politics with respect to Kashmir also? And then I will come to the last question.
I think South Asia still belongs to South Asians. Unfortunately, this BJP government has abandoned that idea. Like, the kind of treatment they are giving out to the Muslims. First, the kind of weaponization of electoral process. First, they had this delimitation in Kashmir and Assam, the two important Muslim centers. Second, they have this weaponization of
SIR.
electoral roll.
SIR.
So this is what can create a problem. Muslims are a part of this country. They have to be given their own place. Okay, declare them second-class citizens, but give them a constitutional position. Now you, by throwing them out of the electoral process, you are not leaving them even with a second-class citizenship. You are making their citizenship suspect. So that is what I expect the leadership in India, our national leadership of all parties, to consider and understand its implications.
So one of the stated objectives of the current regime in Delhi, the BJP, Bharatiya Janata Party, was to diplomatically isolate Pakistan in their tenure. But as it turns out, right now, the Americans, the Iranians, and the GCC country member countries representatives are in Islamabad talking about solving the current crisis. So have they succeeded in their stated objective? How do you see that?
I think, and I'm not very happy saying that. The country of India's size and potential has unfortunately been reduced to a bystander. When we were nobody, when we were economically very weak, politically nowhere, but India's voice was respected, it was heard with attention. As Obama once said about Manmohan Singh, when the Prime Minister speaks, world listens. But now we don't even speak, and we don't want to speak, and we don't. So I think still, this is my personal opinion, I don't know. India, our country, could still regain its position if the BJP government can afford to rise above its anti-Muslim agenda.
Okay,
because they have to carry forward South Asia. And South Asia has Muslims as the second largest majority, wherever they are. So don't...
You have Bangladesh, Afghanistan,
Pakistan.
yeah.
So the leadership of South Asia belongs to India. It is a question of when a Prime Minister in New Delhi picks up a phone, calls Dhaka, calls Islamabad, calls Kabul, and calls them to Delhi and tries to have a fresh start.
So we started from liquor, so let's also end our program with liquor. So there was voices like Nizamuddin Bhatt from the Congress, or Hasnan Masoodi, retired Justice Hasnan Masoodi. They also gave the similar argument that if a bill is tabled in the assembly, a private bill, and then there are concerns about social concerns, individual conscience concerns. But then they also talk about revenue as well. And Tanveer Sadiq, another NC, MLA, he also became controversial last year when he made a statement about revenue. So, as someone who has followed J&K Legislative Assembly very closely, do you think that it could happen in Jammu and Kashmir that liquor could be banned, or these debates will continue and liquor will be there?
The debate will continue. बेखुदी बेसबब नहीं गालिब चलता रहेगा.
Chale, on that note, thank you very much. So this was our 13th episode of the Kashmir Notebook, a special Frontline broadcast with Gowhar Geelani. Please keep writing to us and send your suggestions how to improve this program. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.